There is too much emphasis in the world of trauma healing on whether what happened to you in childhood explains the problems you're having right now. Now, of course, childhood trauma instigates some long-term problems, but what if your problems don't feel to you like they were caused by childhood? What if trauma is going on right now? There's nothing more important than your present time need for healing and for safety and for change. So what's happening in your life now has the potential to drag you down into the worst state you've ever known, or to carry you forward into a new and better life that you've always known you were meant for. And that better life, let's call it blossoming, you blossoming. And now is the perfect time, even if you're going through the hardest time of your life, to set the stage for that to happen for you, to blossom. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Liz, and she writes, "Dear Crappy Childhood Fairy, I am a 34-year-old, unemployed, friendless, single mother of a 5-year-old boy. I was widowed at 32. My son has no siblings, cousins, aunts, or uncles, just me and him and my parents who are somewhat around." Whew, all right, I've got a pencil. I'm going to circle things that I want to come back to, but let's read through Liz's letter and see what's going on, and then I'll go back and see if I can help. All right, she says, "I'm miserable and lonely, and the pain is becoming hard to bear. I'm passing it on to my son. Every day, I worry about how he'll be affected by his, quote, childhood." She puts quotes around it. "My own childhood was unremarkable. I had 2 parents who were young, broke, inexperienced when I was born. They did okay for themselves in the long run, but both still have many years ahead of them, working menial labor jobs. We moved a lot. I went to a new school in a new city every year in elementary school. I had a lot of issues growing up: in eating disorder, depression, self-harm, running away, and eventually heavy drinking and drug use. I don't have much memory of my childhood, but as far as I know, there was no abuse to speak of. My mom's mom died 2 weeks after I was born. Her dad died when she was a child, and she went back to work less than a month after my birth. I'm not really sure who or what my care looked like while she was working. I'm not very close with them now, but I'm on civil terms with them. My mom is cold and not maternal, and I would say I'm closer to my dad, but that isn't saying much. They both drink daily, and I would consider them to be functional alcoholics. I quit drinking cold turkey over 10 years ago after a DUI and have not had a drop of alcohol since. I moved a lot as an adult as well, and just really never found where I fit in this world. I don't have any talents and have never been able to hold a job for too long. I found the love of my life when I was 22, and that lasted 10 years, but ended in his death in a tragic accident 2 years ago. He was the first person that ever felt like home, where I could be myself, and it felt like I finally found where I belonged. We had a crazy chemistry, and I loved him so much. But near the end, it had gotten really bad between us. And 5 years ago, and for a year, he moved out and lived with his mom. She put quotes on mom. But we still saw each other often. Then 3 years ago, he moved back for a year, but I found out that he wasn't living with his mom during that time, but with another woman. And also that he had cheated almost our whole relationship. Wow. Shortly after I found out, he died suddenly in a car accident. It's been almost 2 years since he passed. I've not dated or worked. I've put on weight, I struggle financially, and I'm barely holding it together for my son. And the guilt I feel is very hard to articulate. Considering I'm his only parent, I feel like I owe it to him not only to not be a chain-smoking hot mess and terrible role model, but also to move on and give him a real family. I'm so broken, I can't imagine being with anyone else. I feel foolish for being so dumb and naive and wasting my 20s on someone who didn't care about me. After giving up on all my own hopes and dreams for so long and just being a blind follower, I've lost touch with what they even are, the dreams, and how to access my own wants and needs. I want to find a real relationship and not die alone. For my son to have a father figure and to experience real love, but it feels impossible. At my age, it's hard enough. But on top of that, I have nothing going for me, not even a job, and I look the worst I ever have. I also don't have much help with my son, who's only 5, so I'm sure I wouldn't be many people's first pick, and certainly not anyone of any quality. How can I finally live my life? How do I let go of the pain my late husband caused me and the even more complicated pain of losing him, especially when the next 15 years of my life are devoted to raising his twin, and I actually have his last name, and so does my child. Is it even possible for me to ever be happy? Okay, and that's signed from Liz. Thank you, Liz. I can help you. I'm so sorry, Liz. What a hand of cards you've been dealt. But I hear a lot of trauma-driven thinking here, and I think I can help you identify that and show you how you can move forward. Your life is not over, sweetheart. It's just getting started, especially after all you've been through. All right, so let's see. We have here, you're 34, beautifully young, so much time, very open to new things happening. You're unemployed, friendless. Yes, totally normal for somebody who is going through grief as you are with the sudden death of your partner and your kid's dad. But on top of that, at the same time, finding out that the relationship was never what you thought it was. And there was a massive lie in there that he was living with his mom. What a violation of your trust. I can see how this really threw you for a loop. You're a single mother of a 5-year-old boy. All right, you are in great company. So many people are single parents. And 5 is a lovely age because they're starting to get a little independent and they can begin school. And your life is now opening up. This is very different from having a 2-year-old. You have a 5-year-old. It gets easier from here. You write, I'm widowed at 32. That is so young to be widowed, but there it is. That's what happened. So you don't have brothers and sisters, so he doesn't have siblings, cousins, aunts, or uncles. There's just you two and your parents who you're somewhat around. Okay. And you're miserable, you're lonely, the pain is becoming hard to bear. I totally get it. And you are worried you're passing it on to your son, but let's just see, okay? It's in families where there's a loss of a parent, that is a trauma. The trauma is the loss. The fact that his surviving parent is sad is, what can be done about it? You're a human being. It is sad that he's lost. So this happened when he was 3. So he may have been too young emotionally to really understand what was going on. And I hear what you're saying, like, this is what he, since he's sort of been conscious and can form memories, he's had a sad mom who's struggling. But it's okay. It's okay. So much can be healed. And as you heal, it helps him. Everything you do to heal helps him. And I hear you, like, you're very motivated. And I love you for that. So every day you worry about how he'll be affected by this, quote, childhood. It's still a childhood. It is his childhood. It may not match some ideal you have about how childhood is supposed to be, but that's often the case. And it's sometimes when we, hold what we're experiencing up against this like magic picture that mostly we got from TV, I'm just saying, or looking at other people from the outside, then we think, oh gosh, we're such a loser. But I think anybody who had been through what you've been through would be going through a period of grief. And I think 2 years, that's about right. That's about right to start rounding the corner. Some people, they can get over the worst of it in a year. Sometimes the worst of it hits in the 2nd year. Some people never get over it, but you can process your grief. Grief is normal. It's justified. Even animals have grief, Liz. Even, elephants and dogs and cows will be sad for the loss of who they love. So don't judge yourself. Don't judge yourself. And the stuff that you're going through with the grief of being depressed and putting on weight, that is what it looks like. That's what it looks like. What I'm thinking is how, this is like 3 years after the beginning of lockdown, and I guess a year into that is when he died. And I just think, oh my gosh, the isolation, it just must have been so hard for you, Liz. But it's springtime. I'm recording this actually in April as we speak, but it's springtime in every sense of the word. It's just the springtime of your life to come out. Because you know what? This so-called love of your life, it just turns out he wasn't all that. okay? The love of your life hasn't met you yet. The person who loves you and is trustworthy and honest and capable of sticking around and helping you raise your boy, you haven't met that person yet. So isn't that great? Isn't that something to look forward to? That's the summer, all right? That's coming. But right now you're in preparation. So you talk about your childhood. It wasn't abusive, but your parents are alcoholics and your mom was cold. And there was this trauma where her mom died and she had to go back to work, and they have menial labor jobs, and that is hard. And she had to go right back to work. I guess that was part of survival, and you don't know how you were cared for. So something's going on with those two, that it's necessary for them to drink every day. And I hear you. You don't feel like they're not like emotional support for you. And it sounds like rarely would they be able to help with your son. So I don't know how bad the drinking is, but okay. So you said, I quit drinking cold turkey over 10 years ago after a DUI. Good for you. That is such a rational response to getting a DUI. And drinking, by the way, for somebody who grew up like not loved enough, not connected enough, that's where it comes from. You know, that happens. And you stopped. So I'm going to say right here, I'm just going to say, when you say you quit cold turkey, that sounds like you didn't go to AA. And you must know me by now. If you're going to heal from all of this that has happened to you, you are going to need friends. You're going to need a community around you, and you're going to need tools and a plan forward. And I cannot think of anything more perfect and wonderful for that than Alcoholics Anonymous. I am not an alcoholic myself, but I've probably been to 1,000 open AA meetings because I love what they have. I love their high spirits. I love their clear focus on changing your life and on focusing on the part that we can change. You know, it's really countercultural there, that you can take the focus entirely off of, you know, we all know, we acknowledge these bad things happen, and we care and we feel that and we know it's significant, but it's not where the solution is going there and going there and going there. And in AA, what I encountered were people who were finding in themselves what they could change. And as I ended up adapting some of the things I learned from alcoholics into Crappy Childhood Fairy, what I really, you know, was gifted with by the time I spent learning from them was how you can look at your own contribution to life's problems. You can also seek power spiritually, like a higher power, to fill you up and give you the knowledge of what you need to do next and the power to go forward with it. And when I say power, maybe you've seen my video recently about, you know, getting your power back. I'm talking about the inner power, the power to get up, the power to exercise, the power to get your kid to school on time, the power to, you know, dress in a way you feel pretty when you're going to be around people. Like, that feels good, right? It takes power to do that. And when we're depressed and drained, we can't do it. You know, we're just like scrambling from the thing that we absolutely have to do to the next thing, or not showing up for those things and then feeling terrible about it. So when we start putting our lives back together, it's literally just one little motion at a time, one action at a time. And to do that, you need power. So I teach this technique called the daily practice, and it is really about how to start moving out the fearful and resentful thoughts, like, how could he do that to me? Why aren't I different than this? I should know better. How come my parents won't help me? What am I supposed to do? All of that stuff. I totally understand why you feel like that, but it's so much like pressing down on you. You need space. You need like oxygen around your imagination and your initiative to do something. And so we use this technique, the daily practice, to write those thoughts on paper. And I encourage you, learn the technique. Don't just like say, oh, I'll just write thoughts on paper, because that can end up making you feel worse. It's a specific technique to release them, to not have them anymore, at least for a while. They come back. I'll tell you, sometimes, you know, this is a daily practice. You do it again and again. And I always say it comes back just like you brush your teeth and the next day you have to do it again. It comes back. And that doesn't mean you're brushing your teeth wrong. It's just because you're living life. And that's how our minds work. That's how our emotions work. The stuff comes back. And especially when you're in grief. Now, I've grieved before too. And what I really noticed, and I think this is common, is it comes in waves. You'll get this big like tsunami where you're just like, oh my gosh, I just cannot deal with this. It's all too much. And then it goes down for a little bit and you creep forward a little bit in your life, and then it comes back. Then you creep forward and then it comes back. But when it's back, it feels like it's always been that way and it's never going away, but it is. It is when you have some tools. And what I hear is you got this trauma-driven thinking that might be kind of like sticky. It's making your grief sticky. And let me see if I can identify some of that. I don't have any talents. I don't believe you. You may not have discovered them yet, but I know you do. I know for certain that you have talents and gifts, at least one of them. That's how you're endowed with something that benefits other people. And as you discover that, as you start living a healed life, you will begin to get inklings of what that is and begin to act on it. And you'll begin to blossom into what you're really made for, who you really are. And nothing can bring happiness so much as that, to just start functioning as who you really are. And you said that. You kind of, you got into this relationship so long ago, and you were in the relationship since you were 22. That is so young. And he was the first person that ever felt like home, where you could be yourself. So here's the thing. I don't want to mess up your special memory of him, because of course he was special, but he was a cheater and he lied in such a big way to you. He violated your trust. Together you guys had a wonderful little boy, and it's just always mixed like that. It's never simple to just go, oh, that person's terrible to me. It's mixed. And sometimes the people who have hurt us a lot are the most complicated to love, right? So it's okay that you love him and hold him in a special place in your heart. And at the same time, I just totally pissed at him for being such a liar and violating your trust, and when you counted on him most. But if you were somebody who quit drinking, I just know, people who are complicated find other people who are complicated, and that's why they feel like home. Is, you had these parents who were really emotionally avoidant and not trustworthy. So there it is. That's why it feels like home. As you heal, what feels like home is going to evolve into something better. Your home is actually better. It's sort of like, when you were 22, what felt like home was a grubby tent, or maybe, a crappy little brick house. But what feels like home as you heal is going to be a more beautiful, grand, spacious, light-filled, garden-surrounded place to live. I'm speaking in metaphors here. But as you develop more within yourself, you will match people who bring so much more into your life and who would never do that to you, who would never lie and cheat. You can do that. You can get very clear about that. When you are ready to date, which I don't think you are, but I have a dating course that helps. The very first thing is getting clear about what it is you actually need, and how would you recognize if somebody had that or didn't have that. Because hardly anybody who is traumatized actually has those two steps worked out. It's kind of like, I don't know, I feel something, I feel at home, I feel attracted, I'm in. And then I'm bonded forever because of attachment wounds, right? So you had great chemistry, and that will happen. But as you know, it's not the end all be all. And then it got really bad. You were having a really difficult relationship, which is not unusual, especially with a kid. And then he went to live with his mom, but it was all a lie. And you didn't even find out till he came back. And then he died abruptly in a car accident. And so it's been almost 2 years and you haven't dated or worked. Totally understandable. It's okay. Put on weight. That's fine. Who hasn't? Who hasn't, right? I struggle financially and I'm barely holding it together for my son. This is all normal, Liz. So far, you're okay. You're okay. And this was interesting what you said. The guilt I feel is hard to articulate. And you know that you're his only parent, your kid. And you owe it to him to not only not be a chain-smoking hot mess. I hear you. I was a chain smoker. I was a hot mess. And a terrible role model, but also to move on and give him a real family. No pressure, no hurry on moving on and giving him a real family. You are a real family. You're a real mother, and you are enough until the day comes that you're ready to be, married with somebody else and part of a bigger new family. Don't worry about it. There's no reason to rush that. The best thing for your kid is for you to be in integrity. And it's just sort of common sense that when you're going through a lot and you haven't figured yourself out, it's not a great time to meet somebody. And if for no other reason, just remember, you don't match that healthy person right now. You're healing yourself so that when you recognize somebody who is your equal, you'll recognize them, right? You'd be like, yeah, this feels like home. I would never lie. I would never, try to escape reality through drugs, alcohol, lying, cheating. I would never do that. So I'm never gonna, I can match somebody who I can read. I can tell they won't do it either. And then you'll also have the power, because I found it very hard when I had small kids and I was dating who is now my husband. When we met, I think my kids were 5 and 8, and my kids didn't meet him for a year. And their dad was alive and he was in the picture and taking care of them, some of the days of the week. So it was different. There was a lot less pressure on me, but I'll tell you, it was a lot of pressure. So I can only imagine what it's like for you. And I had the death of somebody that I had dated after my divorce. And long story, and I won't go there because it's triggering and awful, and occasionally I talk about it, but I was grieving. I knew it was messing up my kids, and I needed to show them what it looks like when a parent handles what happened and rises up with cheer and order and keeps life going forward. And it was really so good for me, but it didn't happen right away. It was a couple years before things got together. And the years leading up to that, the thing that had me in that situation was also part of my the divorce. The divorce really messed me up. And, not just the divorce, the whole thing. I don't know. When did it begin? Like, when was it ever not traumatic? But my life got so much better after that when I was able to really give myself to using my tools and connecting myself to a community of other people healing. And I didn't want to. I'm just somebody, if I'm having problems, I just want to hide. I don't want anybody to see me. And I would just much rather everybody think that everything's great, I'm perfect, I'm better than everybody. Wouldn't that be nice? But that wasn't working for me. And so that isolation that comes when you can't accept yourself is brutal. And so there are people, that's why I said AA. AA is wonderful because what you'll find there, you'll find a mix of people who are really dragging their ass. They're not okay right now. And a mix of people who are flying high and they're lending a hand to others. And a mix of people in between too, who are kind of going up and down, but also lending a hand to others in this really profound atmosphere of sort of brotherly love. And you can feel it when you walk in the door. If you don't feel it when you test out a meeting, try it more. They always say try 6 meetings before you decide if it's for you. And people who used to drink but really still want to not drink and want to heal around whatever had them doing that are most welcome in AA. So anyway, if I had the problem of alcoholism, that's where I would be all the time. I went through this whole phase where I was sad because I always say I act like an alcoholic, before I healed it all, before I worked the 12 steps. And I had to go to Al-Anon, which is for families of alcoholics, which I am, and I qualified there, but it was authentic for me to be where I belong. But I have always just loved and respected that atmosphere, that loving spirit of Alcoholics Anonymous. And anybody who has ever had a drinking problem, I would just be like, why are you waiting? You can be where there are kind people. So, okay, sometimes you'll hear people or experience this. It's like, oh, some creepy guy hit on me. It's like, yes, you are going to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and some of them are quite raw. They haven't recovered yet. And so there you get a chance to learn boundaries, to align yourself with people who have a lot of experience, who can show you the ropes, who can help you figure out who's who. And that person for you is going to be a woman. It's going to be a woman who is willing to sponsor other women. And it's going to be a woman who raises her hand when people say who's willing to sponsor, and who, when she shares in meetings, is talking about things that just make your heart sing, that you just go, gosh, that sounds so good. I wish I had that. That's the little light going off that, hey, maybe this is a good person to ask. And if you go to 6 different meetings and you look for that woman who is lit up and who makes you feel inspired, I promise you, you will find help. There's so much more to heal beyond just stopping drinking. There's so much more to heal. And that's a lot of what people in AA talk about, is how alcoholism, really only comes into focus when the drinking is gone. Because the drinking is like this big, escape from the turmoil inside. And the alcoholic woman who showed me the techniques that I now teach as the daily practice, she always said, when she first got sober, even in AA, she was feeling miserable. She was feeling stressed out, isolated, and just so unhappy. And like there was something wrong with her, that everybody else was like, I feel great, I have all these friends. And she wasn't feeling it. But then she learned this way to do the steps every day. And that's what she showed me when I was just in a terrible place 29 years ago. And I started using her technique. And then as I learned about trauma, I realized this technique that she had showed me, it's not everybody in AA does it. I would now say, I think doing this writing and meditation daily, it's very consistent with what AA advises. Most people don't do it. The people who do may very well be people who have complex PTSD, that they're getting neurological dysregulation, which is somewhat unrelated, perhaps. I mean, there's a relationship between trauma and alcoholism, of course, both ways, but CPTSD can happen in the absence of alcoholism, and the neurological dysregulation it brings that makes it so hard to function or process information or connect with people or solve problems. Like, it's dysregulation, and it's neurological, and it's not your fault. But having a daily program that you work can really help bring it back in line. And so one of the things that I find hard is trying to talk my way through my problems. And that was a lot what I had learned before this woman showed me how to write my way through the problems. I used to talk to friends, I talked to a therapist, but I would really almost be like hypnotizing myself into these bad beliefs. So I saw a couple of these things you have here. You know, I'm sort of chuckling with you warmly about the fear of being a chain-smoking hot mess and a terrible role model. I know. And you say, I'm so broken, I can't imagine being with anyone else. But that will pass, and you will be able to imagine it, and you can be with someone else if you want to be. And then you say, you feel foolish and dumb for wasting your 20s on someone who didn't care about you. From what I'm hearing, he did care about you. He just was really effed up, and he couldn't act with integrity. And you didn't waste your 20s. You spent your 20s kind of learning life lessons that so many of us have had to learn, including me. Like a lot of what you've been through, I've been through it too. And there's light on the other side of this mountain. You know, there's a morning on the other side of this mountain. Sometimes when you grow up emotionally neglected, you end up kind of finding yourself in these situations that are so not nutritious. But it's not a waste. And one massive thing you've done is you've created another human being, this kid. And that is so lucky. You know, you're just so lucky. It's such a blessing to have a kid. I know it's hard. It's really hard when you don't have money and when you're depressed. I know what that's like through my own experience. But in the long run, you have this person who every morning you have a reason to get up and care for. And children are there to show you kind of the wonder, the joy of things. You can go outside and play with a garden hose with them, and they have so much fun with a hose that you have a fun time with a hose. So it's an avenue to joy, and it's your avenue. This is your path. This is the path you're on. You are his mom. And I encourage you to just start taking the small steps to open up to this experience and know that you are enough. And it's okay if you're sad sometimes. I do agree it's a good idea to filter the intense emotions and the fear about the future from kids. You don't want them to feel afraid or hopeless either, but you can do that. You can do that if you have people to talk to. So there are AA meetings that have childcare. I'm just telling you, if you look around, there's childcare. So sometimes it's in the next room, or the meeting is at a church that has a playground. But lots of people who go to AA have children too, and they need some help, and people find a way to help them. When I had my first kid, and I was pregnant, and until the very end of my pregnancy, I thought that my kid's dad was not going to be involved at all. I was just going to do it by myself. And I would go to meetings, and all these wonderful people would take me to dinner. They bought me gifts and clothes. They just let me know privately, if you need some help, I'll help you. Like, people showed up for me. So if you can meet life halfway where people are involved, and you can express yourself honestly, which I do think a 12-step program is a good place to do it, and there are probably other community resources, but I really like this one because it is about sobriety, and it is about changing your life and not just plugging into public assistance, which I'm sure you would benefit from. It'd be good to have that too, but to have people who are really committed to you and helping you take your steps forward. It's a wonderful thing that people can help each other with. And it really changed my perspective on the world to be exposed to that. So you're not foolish and dumb. You just are doing what all of us did. We take what we know and what we have and put our best foot forward. So you know half of all marriages end in divorce. So that means you're at least in good company with half of everybody. And some of the half who stayed married might be dealing with the same difficulties you had too. It just hasn't ended. So you feel like you were a blind follower. You gave up on your hopes and dreams, and you've lost touch with what they are or how to access your wants and needs. Well, now is your season, Liz. It's now. Now you get to start getting in touch with your wants and needs. It's not all over because you have a child, and it's definitely not all over because you got this man out of your hair. Sometimes, you know, I don't like how he had to leave your life. That was terrible and tragic for him, but at least he's out of your life, and that needed to happen. Right? That needed to happen. So you are free. You are free to heal, to start finding your next steps. So you want to find a real relationship and not die alone. You can have so much more than not dying alone. You want your son to have a father figure and to experience real love, but it feels impossible. Not impossible. So many of us have put this together. It comes. It comes when you can learn to start recognizing your trauma-driven symptoms when your whole nervous system is going freak out, freak out, freak out, or grief, I'm drowning in grief, and learn techniques to start calming it down. And some of those things you need are adequate nutrition. You need to be eating adequate nutrition. It doesn't have to be this perfect organic, whole foods business, but you need some protein. You need not too much sugar, and you're already off alcohol. And then you need to get outside in the sun and move. And you need to drink enough water that everything's, moving. You need the basics, just like a lawn needs the basics, just like a dandelion needs the basics. You just need those things. And when you have those things, then you've set the stage for healing to be possible. You need sleep. And if you're depressed, you might be struggling with that too much or too little, but if you're on the internet or scrolling on your phone all the time and checking out, that's going to start hurting your sleep. And so you don't have to do this all at once. But one of the things maybe on your list for what to get to when you're ready is just to spend less time on the screen, and when it's bedtime, to read. And your kid's 5, so he probably goes to sleep earlier than you. And maybe you read to him and fall asleep with him. That's what I used to do. I'd fall asleep with the kids, and then I'd wake up at 11 and go off, to where I slept. But I was usually pretty tired, and that would help me get up early in the morning. And getting up early in the morning is how I was able to take care of myself and use my daily practice before they woke up and start working on the research and the skill building that I needed to have better work. And when my kid's dad and I broke up very, very early, when the kids were very small, I had to figure out very quickly how to increase my income. I had some income up until that point, but I needed at least twice that much to get by once we split up. And I figured it out. I have a video about that. I'll put a link to that down in the description section if you want to check that out, about getting on your feet after financial ruin. That's a whole process too, but absolutely doable. And it's so empowering. It just feels so good. I don't deny that being a single mom and having to come up with the child care and the job that earns enough money and then come home and deal with the, food and homework and affection, it's a lot to manage. But you and so many women throughout history, we have done it. We've done it well. And for those of us who were able to achieve a little bit of healing, we were able to connect out with other people who were there to kind of give us a hand. You're going to need other people. And I know you know that, but it's okay to start small. It doesn't have to be like you find the man first. Let that be later in the sequence, as much as you may miss that. And you let go of the idea that your kid has to have a father figure right now. His father is gone, and he's had that loss already. But what will not fix that is to rush in some new guy. That's not going to fix it. So what will help him is if you gradually heal, and then you find somebody who matches your level of healing, who's actually the sort of person who can be a good father figure for him. I just recently spent a vacation with my stepdad, who raised me from the time I was 8, and we had this incredibly healing time. And I was able to express my gratitude for how he brought order and stability into my life at a time when there had been very little of it. So at least my mom chose well on that. There had been a lot of trauma before that in my life and chaos in the house. So you too can meet somebody who brings something even better than you have by yourself. But also take it from me, it's a little too easy to bring in somebody for the wrong reasons who sort of sucks you down to a lower level. You don't need that. If you are single for his whole childhood, that will be okay. You are enough. You are enough. So the pain is now 2 years old, and I think that healing is going to be very possible for you when you are connected and when you're using tools. So I'm going to leave you with a download for anybody who wants to watch this. But first, I just want to put in one more word and say, if you haven't learned my daily practice techniques, this is such a good way to move the hard feelings downstream and start having a new fresh space in your mind and in your heart to have a new experience and to be inspired to take your next steps. If you want to know how to feel happier, like right now, how to get some quick uplift, I've got a download that you can click on right here, and I will see you very soon.